Welcome to PandaAudioBooks, the perfect place for a huge collection of fantasy novels. If you enjoy my content and want to support my work, a small contribution via PayPal is greatly appreciated. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell to stay updated with our latest audiobook chapters. Chapter 291. 1,000 pills form a cauldron. Bitterness arose from deep within Chu Yuyan's heart. She thought about everything that had happened within her world of illusions. Then she looked up toward the two trial-by-fire candidates who were at the peak of the mountain. One was Fang Mu, whose presence, she felt, was somewhat of an accident. For some reason, though, she also felt like she had known all along that it would happen like this. Then there was Yi Fei Mu, chosen of the Tao of Alchemy. Were he not there, she would have been surprised. "I lost," she said with a sigh, then turned and began to walk down the mountain. This mountain could be ascended, but not descended. One step back signified forfeiture and departure from the celestial land. As her foot descended, her vision blurred. When everything grew clear again, she was back on the peak of Eastern Emergence Mountain. She looked over at the alchemists of the East Pill Division, and then the cultivators from the visiting sects. Finally, she understood. These people could not see what had happened inside her world of illusions. This was because as she turned her head to look at the screens projected by the pill furnace, all she could see was Fang Mu's thoughtful expression, not the world he was in. "Welcome back," said Pill Demon with a slight smile. Chu Yuyan suddenly wanted to weep. The realism of the world of illusions had lasted until the moment she returned to reality, and it was still hard to tell one from the other. Wordlessly, she walked over to stand next to Pill Demon. After Chu Yuyan, the old man and the middle-aged man appeared in quick succession, also having admitted defeat. Their eyes were vacant as they walked toward the other alchemists and then sat down cross-legged. They seemed as if their souls had been lost, and all they could do was stare blankly. Hushed discussions immediately sprang up. Just what exactly did they experience in the final test in the world of illusions? Why do they all look so confused? Even the majority of the master alchemists of the East Pill Division were unclear about the details and began to make various speculations. Seeing the questioning looks on their disciples' faces, the sub-patriarchs from the various sects began to discuss the matter. The world of illusions in the Violet Fate sect's celestial land uses the heart as a seed upon which to grow illusions. Under the influence of this art, no one would be able to tell the true from the false, not even someone with a nascent soul cultivation base. You can never come to your senses within the illusion, therefore, it is really another life. Yes, exactly. While inside, previous and future lives don't matter, because it's a dreamland. As for telling the difference between reality and the dream, between the past lives and the future, well, few people nowadays could do that. Upon waking, the illusions will shatter, and that is when they wake up. That's why they look so confused. It seemed as if they were simply discussing the matter, however, what they were actually doing was taking advantage of this East Pill Division trial by fire to train their disciples about the difference between reality and illusion. After all, it wasn't often that a spectacle such as this could be observed. Any enlightenment derived therefrom was nothing more than good fortune. Li Shichi muttered to herself for a moment and then quietly asked, "The illusion shatters the moment they wake up? What happens if someone gains enlightenment, but the illusion doesn't shatter? Would it be possible for them to gain even deeper enlightenment?" Next to her, Tu Luo coolly responded, "For the moment, don't even contemplate the value of such enlightenment. If someone becomes clear-headed and is able to prevent the world of illusion from collapsing, well, that would require incredibly powerful spiritual sense. In fact, it would require Tao enlightenment. Therefore, something like that can only happen serendipitously, and not by choice. In my entire life, I've only seen one person do such a thing." Off to the side, the second sword lord of the Solitary Sword sect heard their interchange and added, "Furthermore, doing such a thing is incredibly dangerous. The more time that passes, the more likelihood by the time that person came to their senses, they would be lost and never be able to emerge." As everyone engaged in their discussions, a rippling buzz filled the air as people noticed that Yi Fei Mu had awoken. They watched the screen as he looked over at Meng Hao. A dark look washed across his face. However, in the end, he chose to retreat, leaving the world of the celestial land and returning to the peak of Eastern Emergence Mountain. The moment he appeared, calls of welcome could be heard coming from the mouths of the various alchemists he was close to. Congratulations in your efforts to secure the win, Furnace Lord Yi. Your rise to Violet Furnace Lord will bring about a true golden age for the East Pill Division. Furnace Lord Yi, as Grandmaster Pill Cauldron, your efforts to secure the win are simply a formality. I'm just afraid that the visitors from the outside sects might still be curious about the details of everything. Congratulations, Furnace Lord Yi. As one person after another spoke out from the crowd, Yi Feimu's expression was no longer proud. With a slight smile, he clasped hands to the crowd. As for the title of Pill Cauldron, he hesitated, neither endorsing it, nor offering any explanation. This, of course, created a feeling of tacit approval. While everyone was looking at Yi Feimu, Furnace Lord Yi Yunqian gave a hearty laugh. He stood and looked approvingly toward Yi Feimu. Feimu, why don't you take out your pill furnace so everyone can see that you are qualified to be a Violet Furnace Lord? Immediately, the eyes of the surrounding alchemists began to glow brightly. And Zai Hai's brow furrowed, but he didn't say anything. Yi Feimu took a deep breath, and then once again, a proud expression covered his face. He smacked his bag of holding with his right hand to produce the pill furnace. It was none other than the one he had acquired within the world of the Mother of Furnaces. It had started out white, but was now violet, and emitted a violet glow which caused the glimmers of violet to reflect within the eyes of all the observing cultivators. Yi Yunqian looked at the violet furnace and immediately let out a loud laugh. He turned toward Pill Demon, clasped hands, and bowed deeply. Congratulations, Master, he said excitedly. It appears that this Violet Furnace Lord promotion has resulted in you acquiring a new apprentice, and that we have acquired a new junior brother. Feimu, why haven't you bowed to your new master yet? A glow of excitement also appeared in Yi Feimu's eyes. He took a deep breath, and was just about to walk forward, when Zai Hai spoke up. Junior brother Yi, he said coolly, this is somewhat incongruous with protocol. The interchange between the two immediately caused the expressions of the 6 other Violet Furnace Lords to flicker. However, they didn't reveal what they were thinking. The expressions of the Furnace Lords, however, all changed. Naturally they could pick up on what was happening. Yi Yunqian's goal was all too obvious. That having been said, the Furnace Lords generally didn't favor Fang Mu, and most of them liked Yi Feimu. Each and every one of them watched with various thoughts and ideas running through their heads. As far as the ordinary master alchemists, not many of them understood what was going on. However, they could pick up on some of the clues. They watched on, speechless, waiting to see what would happen. The sub-patriarchs from the other sects were all experienced and astute. How could they not see what was going on? In fact, they had begun to expect this development some time ago. Of course, they were more than happy to watch such a scene unfold. Fatty watched on wide-eyed. He glared at Yi Feimu, and had long since begun to curse him inwardly. Pill Demon was the big exception. From the very beginning, he hadn't said a single word. It was as if he hadn't heard or seen anything that had transpired. As all eyes came to fall upon the scene, Yi Yunqian gave a slight smile. Oh, he said, a strange note in his voice. Elder brother and junior brother doesn't really understand what you mean. Would you mind clearing up my confusion? Yi Feimu wasn't the only person to step foot onto the peak of the mountain, replied Zai Hai calmly. Yi Yunqian laughed loudly. Oh, so that's the protocol you were talking about. Elder brother and junior brother would of course never overlook such a matter. However, he was only halfway finished speaking when suddenly, a booming sound erupted from the screen depicting the world from the celestial land. When the booming sound appeared, it was obvious that it was coming from within the celestial land itself. The entire celestial land was shaking, and the nexus of it all was none other than Violet East Mountain. Immediately, all of the spectators looked over. Even Yi Yunqian's words were immediately drowned out by the boom. No one noticed, but Pill Demon's eyes suddenly emitted an unprecedented glow, and a smile slowly spread out across his face. It was a smile of satisfaction, filled with emotion and contentment. Back in Meng Hao's world of illusion, he continued to reside in Eastern Emergence County. 3 more years passed. Meng Hao was currently 99 years old, and had once again returned to his master's grave. He looked at the gravestone, and his face filled with emotion. Heaven and earth are just resting places for the myriads of living creatures. Time represents the passage of hundreds of generations of passing travelers. A smile broke out on Meng Hao's face. Life is a journey, every turn of which is filled with new scenery. This path that he tread now contained his mark. Whether the mark was shallow or deep didn't matter. That was because it was his choice. Maybe my path hasn't even arrived. He shook his head. Perhaps in the future he would realize what his purpose in life was. For the moment, he still didn't know. Since he didn't know, he wouldn't force himself to choose. When traveling, it is never possible to know what unfathomable things might occur. That is what makes it beautiful. A carefree smile broke out on Meng Hao's face. When it did, his white hair became black. His crooked frame straightened. His features were no longer ancient, but once again filled with the vigor of youth. He took a deep breath, then looked at the gravestone and dropped to his knees to kowtow a third time. The kowtow of sunset gazing. With this kowtow, karma was finalized, and the master and apprentice relationship solidified. If you do not sever the bond, then neither shall I. With this kowtow, Eastern Emergence County began to turn translucent behind Meng Hao, and then disappeared. With this kowtow, the entire world around him began to disintegrate, leaving behind only the grave. With this kowtow, a roaring sounded out between heaven and earth. Everything began to fall apart. Meng Hao opened his eyes, and the world vanished. He saw the sky once again, the world of the celestial land. And there he stood on the peak of Violet East Mountain. He looked off into the distance, and then took a step forward. As he did, ripples like that on the surface of water spread out. His body melted away. When he reappeared, he had left the world of the celestial land, and was now standing on Eastern Emergence Mountain, outside of the pill furnace. His appearance garnered much attention, including a dark glare from Yi Feimu, and a cold smile from Yi Yunqian. Everything was quiet for a moment, and then Yi Yunqian's cool voice echoed out. Just now I wasn't able to finish speaking. Elder brother and 2 people did step onto the peak of the mountain. However, when that happens, the resulting decision is not made by those 2 people, but rather by you, me and the other Violet Furnace Lords, as well as all the Furnace Lords. We make the final decision. That is the protocol for the raising of a Violet Furnace Lord. Does this explanation suffice, Elder brother An? Yi Yunqian smiled. And Zai Hai, on the other hand, said nothing. He merely flicked his sleeve. According to sect protocol, because 2 people stepped foot on the peak of the mountain, it requires a decision to be made on our part. Whoever receives the most support will become the Violet Furnace Lord. I am Violet Furnace Lord Yi Yunqian. Please, will all fellow Taoists of the Violet Fate sect bear witness today? I believe that Yi Feimu is more qualified than Fang Mu. As such, I select Yi Feimu. Violet Furnace Lord Chen Xiang selects Yi Feimu. Violet Furnace Lord Shenlong selects Yi Feimu. Violet Furnace Lord Yuan Daoming selects Yi Feimu. Violet Furnace Lord Ma Feifeng selects Yi Feimu. In an instant, 5 Violet Furnace Lords had picked Yi Feimu as their choice. This caused Yi Feimu's expression to fill with pride and excitement. Lin Hailong hesitated for a moment. He thought for a moment as he looked at Meng Hao, not making his decision immediately. The Violet Furnace Lord next to him was a middle-aged woman. Her expression was one of indifference, and she didn't speak immediately either. The disciples from the other sects watched as all of this happened. The sub-patriarchs watched with vague smiles, not speaking. Behind the Violet Furnace Lords were the Furnace Lords, who now began to speak. Furnace Lord He Jin selects Yi Feimu. Furnace Lord Sun Zishuan selects Yi Feimu. As the voices rang out, it seemed that the greater part of half of them all selected Yi Feimu. And Zai Hai's face was extremely unsightly. He was about to open his mouth to say something, when suddenly, Meng Hao's voice calmly filled the air. Violet Furnace Lord Yi, I would like to ask a question, he said. Could you please explain exactly why I, Fang Mu, am not as qualified as Furnace Lord Yi. His expression was as calm as always as he asked the question. Yi Yunqian looked at him, and in a very impolite tone replied, "At the moment, it doesn't matter whether we discuss your skill in the Tao of alchemy, or your reputation, or even your ability to create new medicinal pills. In my judgment, you are less qualified than Yi Feimu in all of these areas. Even more importantly, Yi Feimu became famous in the southern domain 10 years ago. Half a year ago, he concocted a 90% consummate medicinal pill. He is destined to become a Violet Furnace Lord. As for you, you lack such qualifications." His words sounded almost like a reprimand, and in fact, as a Violet Furnace Lord, he was qualified to say such things to a Furnace Lord. "Qualifications," replied Meng Hao, glancing at Yi Yunqian for a moment. Then he flung his sleeve out in front of him. A medicinal pill flew out. Then 10. Then 100. Then 1,000. In an instant, more than 1,000 medicinal pills flew out. Meng Hao swirled his sleeve, and they rolled through the air. Each medicinal pill was clearly marked with the symbol of a cauldron. That symbol was exactly like the mark which had been branded into the bedevilment pill. When the pills appeared, the air was filled with an intense medicinal aroma like nothing anyone had ever encountered before. Every single pill in this shocking display contained 90% medicinal strength. These were all 90% consummate pills. These were all the highest value pills that Meng Hao had concocted after the bedevilment pill. He had concocted such pills often, in the hopes of finding an opportunity to sell them off one at a time. However, today, he put them all on display, to shocking effect. The medicinal pills floated in mid-air. The cauldron symbol instantly caused the minds of all of the alchemists to spin. Chu Yuyan immediately rose to her feet, an expression of disbelief on her face. The minds of the disciples from the visiting sects began to reel, even the sub-patriarchs. Their eyes went wide and they stood up, their faces shining with shock. The medicinal pills filled the air, and the medicinal aroma was as thick as fog, roiling out and filling the peak of Eastern Emergence Mountain. The grass in the earth struggled upward. Dark clouds filled the sky. Thunder crackled across the entire state of Eastern Emergence. Even more surprising was that when Meng Hao tossed out the medicinal pills, they began to mass together in mid-air. Slowly, they formed together into the shape of an enormous cauldron, which gave rise to a resplendent glow that rose up with boundless radiance. Meng Hao's cool voice rang out in all directions. "If you add in the fact that I'm Grandmaster Pill Cauldron, then would you say I'm qualified enough?" Chapter 292. Pill Cauldron. Fang Mu. Over 1,000 medicinal pills swirled together to form a cauldron. Medicinal aroma filled the area. In an instant, everyone began to breathe heavily, shocked by the sight of the giant cauldron. Everything was quiet. Lin Hailong shot to his feet, staring at Meng Hao, eyes glowing with unprecedented brightness. Next to him, and Zai Hai, who already knew the true identity of Grandmaster Pill Cauldron, couldn't help but be shocked by the sight of the cauldron formed from 90% consummate pills. The other Violet Furnace Lords were gobsmacked. This many 90% consummate pills, all of them marked with a cauldron symbol, clearly indicated Meng Hao's identity. As of now, no one would be stupid enough to deny that he was Pill Cauldron. If he wasn't Pill Cauldron, how could he possibly have so many 90% consummate pills? If he wasn't Pill Cauldron, then how could he have shockingly created something out of nothing within the third region? Thinking of everything that had happened, and then being faced with the Pill Cauldron floating in mid-air, everyone could clearly see that the famous Grandmaster Pill Cauldron was none other than Fang Mu. Yi Yunqian's face was pale white as he staggered back a few paces, panting. His eyes overflowed with disbelief. He knew that Yi Feimu wasn't Grandmaster Pill Cauldron, but no matter how he'd thought things through, he'd never anticipated that Fang Mu could possibly be the owner of that mysterious identity. In fact, he had harbored other speculations regarding the identity of Grandmaster Pill Cauldron, and was dogged in his conclusions. But now, everything had been turned around. Yi Yunqian's mind spun. The name of Grandmaster Pill Cauldron resounded throughout the entire southern domain, to such an extent that he was included among the other three Grandmasters. In fact, Many people believed that Grandmaster Pill Cauldron really was the fourth Grandmaster of the Southern Domain. Such an identity, such knowledge, were like a shocking, resounding slap across Xianxia's face, stinging, burning, causing his mind to buzz. He thought about what he had just said, and the question Fang Mu had asked him regarding qualifications. Now, the words he had said made his face burn even hotter. He was so ashamed he felt like finding a hole to crawl into. If Grandmaster Pill Cauldron wasn't qualified to be a Violet Furnace Lord, then who in the world was? Were the current 8 Violet Furnace Lords even qualified? Yi Feimu's body shook, and his face was devoid of any trace of blood. He looked as grey as death as he stared mutely at Meng Hao and the giant pill cauldron floating in the air. His mind was blank, as if he had completely lost the ability to even think. He had known all along that he wasn't the mysterious pill cauldron. As more and more people speculated that he was, he had always felt as if he should tell the truth, but instead maintained his silence. He needed that identity to help propel him into being a Violet Furnace Lord. Therefore, when Chu Yuyan came asking about it, he said nothing, and thus gave implicit approval. In truth, he held deep admiration in his heart for Grandmaster Pill Cauldron. As such, he had always felt twisted inside about the matter. Now, he was stunned to learn that Fang Mu was the mysterious Grandmaster Pill Cauldron, which made his mind go completely blank. Chu Yuyan trembled and her mind spun. This development was just simply impossible for her to accept. Her mental image of Grandmaster Pill Cauldron and Fang Mu's appearance had never once overlapped in her mind. In fact, she had believed Yi Feimu to be Grandmaster Pill Cauldron. But now, facing the pill cauldron of medicinal pills, seeing Meng Hao's tranquility and calmness, and hearing his words echo in her ears, her face filled with blankness and disbelief. She couldn't understand how the Fang Mu who had irritated her from the first day she saw him years ago was actually Pill Cauldron, who she secretly esteemed so much. There was no way for Chu Yuyan to accept this. She could only stare awkwardly. Now, the expressions of all of the Furnace Lords who had supported Yi Feimu changed, filling with disbelief. Grandmaster Pill Cauldron was much more important than their ordinary relationship with Yi Feimu. Supporting Yi Feimu was nothing like supporting Grandmaster Pill Cauldron. In the hearts of the Master Alchemists of the East Pill Division, Grandmaster Pill Cauldron occupied a revered place similar to that of Pill Demon. Therefore, though they had supported Yi Feimu, things had now changed in an instant. Now that Fang Mu's identity was revealed, his words echoed in the air like a shocking clap of thunder, resonating into the minds of the Furnace Lords to the point of detonation. All of the Furnace Lords stared mutely, breathing heavily, their faces filled with acute astonishment. No one spoke, but their minds all buzzed with similar thoughts. So Furnace Lord Fang Mu is the real Grandmaster Pill Cauldron. So many 90% consummate pills. Only Grandmaster Pill Cauldron could concoct so many. Fang Mu really is Grandmaster Pill Cauldron. In addition to the members of the East Pill Division, the cultivators from the outside sects all had expressions of incredulity on their faces. Patriarch Violet Civ from the Black Civ sect stared in shock. Suddenly, he thought back to when Fang Mu had concocted pills for them back in the sect, and then he realized why they had been so effective. Fang Mu was no ordinary Furnace Lord, he was Grandmaster Pill Cauldron. Han Bei's narrow mouth was opened wide, as if she couldn't breathe. She stared dully at Meng Hao. Grandmaster Pill Cauldron's reputation was just too great. It resounded like thunder in her ears. And now it turned out that all along, Fang Mu was Grandmaster Pill Cauldron. Fatty was panting, and his expression was one of intense admiration. As for Chen Fan, Li Daoyi, and Li Shichi, as well as all the other disciples from the visiting sects, they simply stared, their minds shaking because of the revelation of Fang Mu's identity. Even the sub-patriarchs were staring thoughtfully, their eyes shining with strange expressions. They could very well imagine how after this day, the name of Grandmaster Pill Cauldron would thoroughly fill the entire southern domain. When that happened, Fang Mu might not be like the sun in the sky above the southern domain, but he would certainly be nearly as illustrious. Violet Furnace Lord Yi, said Meng Hao coolly, staring the pale-faced Yi Yunqian straight in the eye. Is my status high enough? Yi Yunqian wanted to say something, but considering that Fang Mu was Grandmaster Pill Cauldron, all the words became stuck in his throat. How could he have the face to say anything? I support Furnace Lord Fang Mu, And Zai Hai said suddenly. Next to him, Lin Hailong did not hesitate for a moment. He immediately repeated and Zai Hai's words. After that was the middle-aged woman. Next, all of the Violet Furnace Lords who had supported Yi Feimu sighed in their hearts, and then voiced their support for Fang Mu. After that were the Furnace Lords. Roughly 90% of the nearly 100 Furnace Lords all echoed words of support. I support Grandmaster Pill Cauldron. I support Furnace Lord Fang Mu. Their voices echoed out, layer upon layer, transforming into a cacophony that filled the air. This chapter was sponsored by Darren Chen, Anonymous, Valera McDaniel, and Patrick Nguyen. Chapter 293. Legacy Apprentice Yi Feimu smiled sadly as he looked at Meng Hao. The sense of loss within his heart had reached the ultimate level. In order to fulfill his desire to become a Violet Furnace Lord, he had neglected his cultivation, and had spent all of his time stubbornly pursuing the Tao of Alchemy. He had always believed that with enough persistence, his skill in the Tao of Alchemy would assure his place as a Violet Furnace Lord. Yi Yunqian had given him this affirmation. Even some of the other Violet Furnace Lords had approved. Why did he have to show up? Why does the Violet Fate Sect's East Pill Division have to have Yi Feimu and Fang Mu? With a bitter laugh, he staggered backward and coughed up a mouthful of blood. It wasn't that he was unconvinced. The instant he learned that Fang Mu was Grandmaster Pill Cauldron, he knew it all to be correct. He couldn't blame others for supporting Fang Mu. He could only laugh, and bitterly at that. He proudly told himself that if it wasn't for his opponent's strength, and the fact that he was Grandmaster Pill Cauldron, then Yi Feimu, who was at the peak of the East Pill Division Furnace Lords, would be second to none. He would definitely have succeeded, and taken first place in the Violet Furnace Lord promotion trial by fire. Now, however, he was defeated. He could even imagine the scorn with which people would look at him later in the sect. It would not be scorn regarding his Tao of Alchemy, but scorn because of his tacit implication that he was Grandmaster Pill Cauldron. Therefore, he could only laugh bitterly, utterly disheartened. Blood seeped out of the corners of his mouth. My Tao of Alchemy can't be defeated. One loss, I can accept, or even two, but repeated failure will destroy my Tao of Alchemy. No. What has been defeated is not my Tao of Alchemy, but myself. He wiped the blood from his mouth, and his eyes once again shone with determination. My Tao of Alchemy will never be defeated. It is unprecedented, one of a kind, original in heaven and earth. This is my great Tao of Alchemy. His breathing was ragged as he looked over at Meng Hao. Chu Yuyan said nothing. She gradually suppressed the trembling of her mind as she stared at Meng Hao. An unparalleled bitterness rose up in her heart. She had long since been defeated. She realized that from the moment she had stepped into the world of the Celestial Land, she had lost. If Fang Mu had not been there, nor Yi Feimu, then she definitely would have become a Violet Furnace Lord. She still wanted to prove herself, but as of now, there was no chance. In the Violet Furnace Lord trial by fire, only one alchemist could become a Violet Furnace Lord. Miss this one opportunity, and no matter what stunning achievements you made later, you could only live with regret. There would never be a second chance at the trial by fire. Just like my Tao of Alchemy, which seeks to find that missing spark of life. Today, that spark of life has completely vanished, and there is no way to find it again. Just like my Tao of Alchemy. Within her bitterness, blood seeped out of the corners of her mouth. The pain she felt inside was because of the Tao of Alchemy. Everyone was silent. Yi Yunqian looked agonized, incapable of saying anything further. He felt stabbing pains in his heart, and he could only think that Yi Feimu's path was now over. His future was nothing more than a grave. The surrounding cultivators observed the scene with various thoughts in mind. They all had their own concept regarding the path of the Tao of Alchemy. This was because everyone had a different concept of what stubbornness meant. Everyone had their own path. It was not easy to compare such things. After all, what was defeated was not just an individual, but a Tao of alchemy. Because endurance became impossible, collapse was inevitable. As silence filled the area, a light sigh could suddenly be heard, seemingly from very far away. Grandmaster Pill Demon slowly rose to his feet. His gaze swept over the alchemists. Everyone whose gaze he met slowly lowered their heads, their faces filled with respect. Eventually, his eyes came to rest on Yi Feimu. The Tao of alchemy is invincible, he said. Even more invincible is the determination to cultivate the Tao of alchemy. If that determination exists, then even after 10,000 defeats, your Tao of alchemy will always be there. You have done well. Ever since you joined the sect, you have consistently pursued your own path. Your path is winding and full of thorns and thistles, making it slow to traverse. Only with never-ending determination can you have the courage to face defeat, and yet proceed onward to reach your goal. Walk such a path, and your path will be invincible. Fear not defeat. Fear giving up. Yi Feimu's body trembled as he stared blankly at Pill Demon. Silently, he clasped hands and bowed deeply. Many thanks for your enlightenment, Patriarch. You may be a Violet Furnace Lord, said Pill Demon coolly. From this day forth, you are my novitiate. Yi Feimu trembled, and his face filled with excitement. This was his dream, finally becoming a reality. The path had been winding, but to become a Violet Furnace Lord had been the most important pursuit in his life for many years. The minds of the surrounding alchemists of the East Pill Division were reeling as they watched. None of them knew what to say as Pill Demon's gaze next fell upon Chuyuyan. You have searched for a Tao of alchemy that embraces life like that which we live. You wish to find that spark of life which doesn't exist. It is exceedingly hard to reach the peak of such a Tao of alchemy. It is not a winding path, but a very difficult one. In fact, sometimes, there is no spark of life. When that happens, what will you do? The path of your Tao of alchemy lies not in pill concoction, but in refinement of the heart. You have always been my apprentice. But unlike the others, you are my personal apprentice. You, also may become a Violet Furnace Lord. As Pill Demon's voice sounded out, tears began to stream down Chuyuyan's face. She immediately bowed low to Pill Demon. Each and every one of the alchemists of the East Pill Division was speechless. Only the Violet Furnace Lords seemed to want to speak up, but held their tongues. Lin Hailong hesitated a moment. He was the most senior of the Violet Furnace Lords. Bracing himself, he opened his mouth. Master, according to the custom of the trial by fire for promotion to Violet Furnace Lord, only one person can be selected. Ever since Eternal Mountain left, you have made no progress in your Tao of alchemy. You haven't moved at all since that year. Do you know why? Pill Demon calmly looked over at Lin Hailong. I haven't told you all these years, because I wanted you to realize it for yourself. But you still don't understand. Is custom really that important? Feeling a bit awkward, Lin Hailong forced a smile onto his face and said, But, the custom was begun by you, Master. Since I began the custom, then naturally I can change it. Let it be so. He flicked his sleeve, paying no further attention to Lin Hailong and turning to look at Meng Hao. Lin Hailong heaved a sigh of relief in his heart and immediately stepped backward. Actually, he only spoke because there were outsiders present to observe the ceremonies. Being the most senior of the Violet Furnace Lords, he was required to say at least something, even if it was in a roundabout way. Pill Demon looked at Meng Hao. Using the body as the pill furnace, and the heart as the pill formula. Refining the sun and the moon, refining the ancientness of the stars. Such a Tao of alchemy. He paused for a moment. Master looks forward to finding out where your future path will lead. A smile broke out on his face. As he spoke, the onlookers could tell that there was something different about his words. This was because Pill Demon was calling himself Master. Violet Furnace Lords become my novitiates, and thus only need to kowtow one time. Since you are Pill Cauldron, you can become my personal apprentice with 2 kowtows. However, I already accepted a hefty apprentice's fee from you, so from today on, I will have a second legacy apprentice. Now, kowtow before me 3 times. As he smiled at Meng Hao, The kindness in his eyes overlapped with those of the master from Meng Hao's world of illusion. Meng Hao had a strange expression on his face. The words apprentice's fee suddenly made him recall his 200 million spirit stones. Before he could say anything, though, Pill Demon raised his right hand and flicked his sleeve. Immediately, ripples appeared in the air, surrounding Meng Hao and then disappearing into his body. "Hailong," said Pill Demon. "Please assist Master in receiving all the friends from the other sects. Announce to all the southern domain that I have accepted Fang Mu as my legacy apprentice." As his words filled the air, everyone stood up and clasped hands toward the heavens. Lin Hailong trembled inwardly when he heard the words, and his vision came to rest on Meng Hao. The other Violet Furnace Lords were the same. They all knew what a legacy apprentice was. Envy shone in Han Bei's eyes. She knew that from this day forward, Fang Mu would be different than anyone else in the southern domain. Fatty sighed inwardly, reminding himself how the oldest brother was the most awesome. This time, he had worked his way into being Pill Demon's legacy apprentice. When it comes to apprentices, there are 3 levels: novitiate, personal apprentice, and legacy apprentice. Novitiates only receive simple advice, although they are permitted to ask questions. Personal apprentices follow the master by his side. They receive instruction verbally and by example. Personal skills are passed down, including some secret techniques. Legacy apprentices are the most important of all. They receive a lifetime of knowledge. They are the hope for the future, the hope to pass on everything. Nothing will be held back from such an apprentice. Such an apprentice is even more important than a son. ******. In the deepest corner of the Violet Fate sect, within the East Pill Division, is a squat mountain. The mountains which surround it are much higher than it. However, this mountain seemed to be embodied with a profound air of dignity, as if it were the most senior of all the mountains. This mountain was actually the pinnacle of all the mountains of the East Pill Division. Located on this peak of mountains was a building, which Pill Demon led Meng Hao to. The instant Meng Hao saw it, he gaped. The building looked exactly like his master's house from the world of illusion. Pill Demon pushed the doorway open and walked inside, back facing Meng Hao. As he walked, he explained, "You experienced the kowtow of innocence. You walked the kowtow of roaming. In the end, you chose to perform the kowtow of sunset gazing. With these 3 kowtows, you took me as your master." Meng Hao followed, watching the old man's back as he walked along. Suddenly, he realized that this man didn't seem like a stranger at all. The life he had lived in the world of illusions was overlapping with reality. Meng Hao suddenly clasped hands and bowed deeply toward Pill Demon. "Apprentice greets master," he said. "In the celestial land, master told you that you would only need to perform 2 kowtows. The first kowtow was broken up into 3 parts. Master has sown karma, and because you did not break it, neither shall I. As for the second kowtow, I didn't explain it back then. Now the time has come for you to understand. The second kowtow will come if the day ever arrives in which I return to the dust. Then you must kowtow to break our karma, so that our fates are no longer intertwined. I will give you a lifetime of favor as your master. All you must give me is the ability to smile before I die. That smile will be because I know that my legacy from this life will be passed on. If in the course of being my apprentice you choose the same path as my first legacy apprentice, Liu Rufeng, and leave me, then there will be no need for the second kowtow. Your feet belong to you, and the path lays beneath your feet. The choice will be yours to make in the future." Pill Demon suddenly turned to look at Meng Hao. "However," he continued slowly, "if I were to tell you that I am unable to dispel the poison of the resurrection lily, would you still be willing to take me as your master?" This chapter was sponsored by DP, Michael Wu, Hui Leong Gan, and Eric Lane. Chapter 294. Complete Legacy. Meng Hao looked at his master silently for a moment. Then, he quietly said, "At first, I came because I wanted to get rid of the poison. After I joined the sect, I stayed because of the Tao of alchemy." Pill Demon gazed at Meng Hao for a long moment. Finally, a look of contentment appeared on his face, and he smiled. Slowly, he said, from your first day in the sect, Master felt the aura of the resurrection lily. Later, when I saw you, I understood the situation. There are 3 ways that you can dispel the poison. One is for it to merge with you, after which, you will no longer be you. The second is for you to devour it, then it won't be it. As for the third, it is to use your own Tao of alchemy to dispel the poison yourself. Karma exists within heaven and earth. The resurrection lily in your body is the cause of the karma. Other than you, no one else can dispel it. The reason is because no one else is you. The fact that no one else can dispel the poison but you, is the result of the karma. On this path, the first is the passive, the second is the active, and the third is the most active method, that of using your Tao of alchemy. I presume you understand the meaning of my words. Meng Hao was silent. The poison had been within him since the state of Jiao, pestering him all the way until now. He had been unable to dispel it for that entire time. When he first joined the Violet Fate sect, he'd had no understanding of the Tao of alchemy. However, thanks to his constant cultivation, he had gained more enlightenment regarding the poison, as well as some bit of hope. Hearing Master's words now, though, caused him to sigh in his heart. This poison is nothing, said Pill Demon. With your skill in the Tao of alchemy, you'll be able to dispel it sooner or later. Master can see that the resurrection lily has somehow been suppressed. Strange. Right now it's as if it's asleep. However, the power of suppression seems to be gradually weakening. Meng Hao's eyes glittered. Calmly, he said, Master, if I must dispel the poison myself, then, can I ask, in your experience, have you ever known someone else to successfully do so in the past? One person, replied Pill Demon. He lived by the Milky Way Sea, and his name was Reverend Silverlamp. His cultivation base was unfathomable. He came to me 700 years ago, looking for a method to dispel his poison. I said the same thing to him that I told you. 300 years later he returned to me to repay my kindness. He had successfully dispelled the poison. Meng Hao was thoughtful for a moment, then gave a slight smile. If that person could dispel the poison, then I will definitely be able to use my Tao of alchemy to do the same. His voice low, expression somber, Pill Demon continued, if Master forcefully assisted you in dispelling the poison, it would harm the cycle of karma. That would not benefit you at all. However, under my tutelage, your Tao of alchemy will eventually reach the point where you can dispel it yourself. The poison of the resurrection lily gave you the power of nature talent. If in the future you dispel the poison, then you will be able to assimilate its full power. In that case, you can turn one of the most ultimate poisons under heaven into a rarely seen treasure. Such a treasure will enable you to open up your path to the heavens. Having this poison within you might seem like a disaster, but one aspect of the disaster is unprecedented good fortune. He suddenly changed the subject. After the 3 kowtows, you became my legacy apprentice. Therefore, Master has 3 gifts for you. He raised his arm and flicked his wide sleeve. Immediately, everything around them swirled into a riot of colors. The first gift is a batch of outlander pills. The name comes from the expression a night of outlandish tales. A pill such as this has never before appeared in the southern domain. I created it during alchemic enlightenment 3 years ago. This batch contains 3 pills in total. Consuming 1 pill will cause the resurrection lily to slumber for 100 years, will increase your longevity by 100 years, and will allow you to make progress in your cultivation base. If you face any sort of blockage, it can help you to break through. These 3 pills will help you, my apprentice, to reach the nascent soul stage with no problems. In total, it will also give you 300 years of extra time to dispel your poison. If you have not succeeded after 300 years, then I will concoct another batch of pills for you, and will continue to do so until the day you dispel the poison. The words entered Meng Hao's ears and sank all the way to his heart. He looked at his master, and could feel the sincerity in his words, as well as a kindness and love. 3 years ago, Grandmaster Pill Demon had concocted pills during alchemic enlightenment, just for him. Meng Hao clasped hands and bowed deeply. Many thanks, Master. Master's second gift for you is a legacy technique of the East Pill Division. The name is Spirit Summoning Incantation. It can be used to refine a pill up to 6 times, although, with sufficient latent talent and cultivation base, the limit of 6 can be broken. Again, this is a legacy technique of the East Pill division. To date, I have only ever passed it on to 2 people. You, and your former elder brother Liu Rufeng. With that, Pill Demon reached up and pushed down onto Meng Hao's forehead. Instantly, Meng Hao's body trembled, and an icy coldness swept through him. A long passage of text appeared in his mind. It seemed abstruse and profound, but after scanning over it, Meng Hao seemed to have gained complete enlightenment. This is a legacy technique which may not be passed on to anyone other than a legacy apprentice. There is no complicated process to understand how to employ it. As long as you master the fundamentals, you can use it. Later, you must pass it on to another, and so it will go from generation to generation. A profound look gleamed in Pill Demon's eyes. The last of my 3 gifts is a precious treasured item of the East Pill division. The East Pill Ever-Burning Flame. He flicked his right sleeve again, and the mountainside split open. A rumbling sound filled the air as a massive fissure appeared. Within was a flight of steps that seemed to descend down into the depths of the earth. Pill Demon and Meng Hao, master and apprentice, walked downward. They walked for a very, very long time. Eventually, they were deep down in the earth beneath the Violet Fate sect. Meng Hao's mind trembled as he looked ahead. In front of him was an enormous limestone cavern. Within the cavern were 3 enormous, half-burned black joss sticks. Strands of black smoke emanated up from them to swirl and float about. In addition to the smoke floating around the cavern, greenish flames also burned everywhere. Above the 3 joss sticks floated a black pill furnace, approximately 3 meters tall. It seemed as if it were being supported by the smoke and fueled by the flames. Pill Demon looked at the pill furnace, and his eyes shone as if he were recalling some memory. It was a complicated expression which lasted for only a moment before he sighed lightly. This incense is not of this world. The smoke never disperses and the incense never ceases burning. This is the East Pill division's ever-burning flame. It has been burning for more than 20,000 years. It is a legacy which cannot be extinguished. Instill it into your heart, and it can become an alchemic flame. After you reach core formation, fuse this flame into your violet core, and it will ignite. Thereafter, whenever you concoct medicinal pills, you will not need to use earthly fire. This is your personal alchemic fire, with which you can refine all objects in heaven and earth. In the entire East Pill division, only you and I are qualified to use this legacy fire. The ever-burning flame is always here, as am I. This last line was uttered by Pill Demon in a murmur, making it difficult for Meng Hao to hear clearly. As he spoke, Pill Demon was staring at the joss sticks, the smoke and the flame, and it seemed as if he wasn't even speaking to Meng Hao. After a moment, he looked toward Meng Hao. You will stay here in secluded meditation. When you have assimilated the will of the fire into your heart, then you may emerge. With that, he turned and slowly strode up the stairs, eventually disappearing. Meng Hao thought about everything for a long time, then sat down cross-legged. He looked down at the pill bottle in his hand. Inside were the Outlander pills Master had concocted for him. Meng Hao could hardly imagine how precious the pills were. He put the pill bottle into his bag of holding, and then closed his eyes. Within his mind floated the spirit summoning incantation. Within were techniques to refine a pill 3, for even 6 times. By using this technique on an ordinary pill, it was possible to transform it into a consummate pill. The power of such a technique caused Meng Hao's mind to shake. This was a divine ability of the Tao of alchemy, congruous in cultivation terms to the sublime spirit scripture. You could say that with this pill concocting technique, Meng Hao truly was a sort of grandmaster in the field of pill concoction. Skill in this technique was not something that anyone could cultivate. Starting with the 4th refinement, any flame other than the East Pill division's ever-burning flame would not be sufficient to employ the technique. In the entire East Pill division, only Pill Demon and Meng Hao could use the ever-burning flame and employ the 4th refinement. Only they were qualified. Meng Hao took a deep breath as he opened his eyes. Now he understood why Master had instructed him to stay here and gather the East Pill ever-burning flame into the depths of his heart. This is a complete legacy, he thought, looking at the joss sticks, the smoke, and the greenish inextinguishable flames. The flame and the technique complement each other. Without one or the other, it would be impossible to reach the pinnacle. Time passed by. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. During those 3 months, Meng Hao never left the limestone cavern. However, the promotion of 3 Violet Furnace Lords had caused a shocking commotion throughout the southern domain. Many people were saying that, of the past 10 Violet Furnace Lord promotions, this was the most incredible by far. Thanks to word being spread by other sects, Chu Yuyan's Tao of Alchemy, as well as her skill in pill concocting, became the talk of the southern domain. It was said that she fully deserved to become a Violet Furnace Lord. Her name spread throughout the great sects, as did the expression Violet Furnace Lord Chu Yuyan. Above her, and causing even more of a stir, was of course Yi Feimu. He was stunning to the extreme, as was the potency and invincibility of his Tao of Alchemy. He concocted 1 pill to create 10,000 stairs up the mountain. The stories spread until everyone in the southern domain had heard of him. Considering he had already garnered impressive fame in the past, now that he had become a Violet Furnace Lord, his name was thoroughly prominent. In fact, he could be considered a pillar of the Violet Fate sect. Most shocking of all, was none other than Fang Mu. He was Grandmaster Pill Cauldron, legacy apprentice of Grandmaster Pill Demon. He had risen to prominence in the western region of the southern domain, where he had slain a Blacklands core formation cultivator. All of this caused Fang Mu to instantly become the most talked about person in all of the southern domain. More and more people viewed him as the 4th Grandmaster of the southern domain. Word spread of how, atop the peak of Eastern Emergence Mountain, he had formed the enormous pill cauldron of 1,000 medicinal pills. When people heard the story, their blood boiled, causing even more people to talk about how he was the 4th Grandmaster. In the Violet Fate sect's East Pill Division, the Honorable Fang Mu was second only to Grandmaster Pill Demon. All of the cultivators in the East Pill Division recognized this. Many people took Meng Hao to be the Tao Child of the East Pill Division, equal even to the Tao Child of the sect itself, or perhaps even a bit higher in reputation. It was at this time that a great change occurred to the corpse which had fallen from the sky to land in the southern domain all those years ago. Magical symbols appeared on its skin, then floated out into the air, creating refracted reflections of themselves. There were some who recognized what this text was. It was one of the 3 classic scriptures, the Tao Divinity Scripture, the Sublime Spirit Scripture, the Tao Divinity Scripture, and the Heaven Severing Scripture. 3 classic scriptures, each one capable of arousing terrifying waves of peril. Even people from the Western Desert and the Eastern Lands employed various shocking methods and powers to teleport to the southern domain because of it. Furthermore, upon the appearance of the scripture, the force preventing people from nearing the corpse suddenly vanished. The corpse, which was as large as a mountain, was now approachable. The Solitary Sword sect paid quite a price to acquire a hair from the corpse's head. According to the rumors, they refined the hair into a precious treasure which could shock heaven and earth. Grandmaster Eternal Mountain from the Golden Frost sect employed all the power of the sect to acquire a blood sample from the corpse. Supposedly, the pill he concocted with it was almost a celestial pill. As word spread of the various events, the southern domain was thrown into a thorough commotion. More and more sects and clans dispatched forces to the immortal's corpse. At the same time, an increasing volume of shrill calls could be heard from within the rebirth cave. Soon, they turned into sustained roars. Furthermore, a black wind emerged from within the cave to sweep around the area surrounding the corpse. Throughout the years, countless cultivators who were nearing death had entered the rebirth cave, hoping to be reborn. As to whether those people were alive or dead, no one was sure. But based on the resulting legends and stories, the rebirth cave had slowly come to be just like the ancient Temple of Doom, one of the 3 danger zones. After more than 10 years had passed during which the corpse was under investigation, the bizarre life force within the cave was finally on the move, and revealing its avaricious will. Figurative storm clouds roiled over the southern domain. This chapter was sponsored by Alan Tam. Chapter 295. Green Mark. As more news spread about the Immortal's corpse, the Violet Fate sect gradually began to pay closer attention to the matter. The first to be dispatched were some chosen from the Violet Chi division, along with a sect elder. It was at around the same time that other of the great sects and clans also sent their forces there. At the same time, more and more southern domain cultivators gathered in the region of the Rebirth Cave, hoping to eke out some good fortune there. The momentous events in the southern domain went so far as to attract the attention of the western desert. Actually, years ago, when the corpse had just fallen from the sky, western desert cultivators had arrived to investigate. Because of the new rumors spreading about the corpse, large amounts of western desert cultivators once again appeared. Even the eastern lands viewed the developments with importance and sent cultivators. Eventually, the cultivators gathering around the Rebirth Cave and the Immortal's corpse found out something very bizarre. The cultivation base of any nascent soul cultivator who approached the corpse would be severely suppressed. If they continued to push forward, it would eventually be pushed down to the core formation stage. Core formation cultivators, on the other hand, experienced no hindrances whatsoever. Even more bizarre was that any cultivator who touched the corpse, which resembled something like a small mountain, would immediately disappear, teleported away. Most would be teleported back into the area a short while later. When recounting their experience, everyone described things differently. One person saw a river, another saw buildings, palaces, and temples. One caught sight of precious treasures, but was unable to acquire them. Another described seeing celestial pills, and one person, pill formulas carved onto stone walls. Even more far-fetched was someone who claimed to have seen a battlefield, deep in the middle of which was a coffin. There were all sorts of descriptions, none exactly alike. All of this made the Immortal's corpse even more fantastic, and caused it to attract even more people to come investigate. In a period of a few months, the Violet Fate sect had already dispatched 5 groups of people. Starting with the 4th group, it wasn't just the Violet Chi division who went, but also alchemists from the East Pill division. This was because the cultivator who had seen pill formulas was none other than a Violet Chi division disciple. After returning and telling his tale, it only took a few days for the East Pill division to include alchemists with the 4th group dispatched. The leaders of this particular group was none other than Yi Feimu, and Zai Hai, and Yi Yuntian. 3 Violet Furnace Lords emerged simultaneously, along with experts from the Violet Chi division. This was the 4th wave sent to enter the region of the Immortal's corpse. A month passed, and more bizarre events occurred. The various sects and clans continued to dispatch more people. Now, even eccentrics of the patriarch level appeared. It was at this time that the Violet Fate sect began organizing the 5th group of people to travel to the Rebirth Cave. By this time, Meng Hao had been in secluded meditation for half a year. It was 3 days after the 5th group left, led by Chu Yuyan and Lin Hailong, that he finally emerged. When he walked out from the subterranean cavern, his body was somewhat weak. However, his eyes were filled with profundity much deeper than before. There was no evidence on him that he possessed the ever-burning flame. However, if you looked deep into his eyes, you couldn't help but think that there was some massive conflagration deep therein. Meng Hao had already melded the East Pill ever-burning flame into his mind and heart. Once he broke through from Foundation Establishment and formed a violet core, then he could transform it, and cause the ever-burning flame to ignite, and never be extinguished. After emerging from meditation, Meng Hao could immediately sense the storm winds which flitted about the sect. After some inquiries, he learned about the phenomena regarding the Immortal's corpse which had begun half a year previous. Meng Hao actually knew much more about the Immortal's corpse than most others. On more than one occasion, he had gotten the feeling that the corpse had fallen into the world, because it was searching for him. This speculation caused him to hesitate, and hold back from nearing the thing. Hearing the various stories regarding the corpse caused Meng Hao to think about the matter quietly for a while. Then, he went to pay a formal visit to his master. Afterward, he decided to once again go into secluded meditation, this time, to concoct a 3 mortalities pill and break through to core formation. At the moment, Meng Hao was thoroughly within the great circle of Foundation Establishment. The only road for him now was the one leading to becoming a core formation expert. After that, he could cultivate core chi, and then he could truly rise to prominence. Then, even core formation cultivators would have to be careful around him. Many new paths would open up. You could say becoming a core formation expert is truly becoming a cultivator. The breathing exercises that cultivators practice are actually a way of preparing for the path of core formation, and counts as just the beginning. During foundation establishment, a foundation is laid. The more solid it is, the more powerful the result will be in core formation. In fact, core formation is the first true explosive power upon the path of cultivation. Core formation cultivators can use core chi to make magical techniques reach the pinnacle of power. Beyond that pinnacle, such techniques become divine abilities. Divine abilities are techniques that really only nascent soul cultivators can master. Charge through to core formation, thought Meng Hao. His eyes gleamed with stubbornness as he sat cross-legged in his immortal's cave. He waved his right sleeve, and a black pill furnace materialized. As soon as it did, the face of a youth appeared on its surface. It stared hatefully at Meng Hao, its eyes filled with venomous hatred as it screamed a noiseless scream. It was still filled with rage because Meng Hao had taken it out from the world of the mother of furnaces. Meng Hao eyed the materialized youth on the surface of the black pill furnace. Then, he snorted coldly. The spirit of the pill furnace was unable to tell the difference between good and bad. Whenever Meng Hao used it to concoct pills, it was always filled with resentment. Since it seems you are seeking to die, I'll help you to understand what it means to live a life worse than death. It won't be long before you're pleading with me to help you. With that, he grabbed the black pill furnace, and, ignoring the fierce struggling on the face of the youth, as well as the noiseless screaming, he directly placed it into the blood-colored mask. Elder Ultimate Vexation, this is the spirit I spoke of a while ago. I joined this sect just to capture this bully. May I prevail upon you to convert it? The meat jelly was currently perched atop a listless, ingratiating Li clan patriarch, leaning over and looking down at him. When it heard Meng Hao's words, it began to tremble, and its eyes shone with a brilliant light. Filled with excitement, it immediately looked at the black pill furnace which Meng Hao had delivered to it. Fear not, said the meat jelly with a smile. You may be immoral, you may be incorrect, but you can rest at ease. The great, handsome, kind-hearted ultimate vexation will help bring you back from the path of wickedness. It hopped over next to the black pill furnace. Meng Hao retracted his spiritual sense, ignoring the spirit of the furnace. Instead, he pulled out the 10,000 refinements furnace and some medicinal herbs. After a moment's thought, he devoted himself fully to pill concoction. He would concoct the 3 mortalities pill, which was required to be able to break through from foundation establishment to core formation. The diligence with which Meng Hao focused on concocting the medicinal pill he needed for his breakthrough does not need to be described in detail. He took a full half a month, which, considering it didn't involve alchemic enlightenment, was actually quite a long time for him, something that didn't happen very often. Half a month later, he looked down at the 3 mortalities pill in his palm, and took a deep breath. Then, he started to duplicate it. Early in the morning of the next day, Meng Hao unhesitatingly consumed a 3 mortalities pill and began to circulate the power of violet qi from the east in an attempt to form a violet core. Days passed. Meng Hao lost track of how many 3 mortalities pills he consumed. He had never imagined that using the 10 Tao pillars of the perfect foundation to form a violet core would be such a difficult process. A month went by, and Meng Hao was completely immersed in using the 3 mortalities pill to reach core formation. However, after a month of attempts, he had not succeeded. He was only a bit away, but no matter what he did, the only thing he could do was produce violet qi. Every time he tried to form it into a core, he failed. Failure after failure caused Meng Hao to begin to regret having borrowed such a vast amount of spirit stones from the sect after becoming a violet furnace lord. Watching them flow away like water caused him intense pain. However, there was nothing he could do about it. Based on this rate of success, could my chances of success with 10 Tao pillars really be 1 in 1,000? Meng Hao sighed. That thought was quite frightening. Without the copper mirror, his cultivation base would never be able to progress beyond foundation establishment. He sat thinking for a while, his brow furrowed, considering Li Daoyi and the others, and their breakthrough at the Dao Giza. It must have something to do with my 10 Tao pillars, sighed Meng Hao. He didn't completely give up. Based on his speculation just now, even if he only had a 1 in 1,000 chance, that meant there was still hope. The first step is to form a violet core. Then after I concoct the perfect gold core pill, I can form a gold core. For me, the core formation stage will involve a huge jump in power. Once I'm at core formation, I can wear the blood-colored mask and employ the Blood Immortal's divine abilities. Also, according to what the meat jelly said, after I reach core formation, the parrot will appear. Meng Hao's eyes filled with determination as he thought these things. I must form a violet core. He flicked his sleeve, and was about to go borrow some more spirit stones when, suddenly, his entire body trembled. It wasn't just him that was shaking, it was everything around him. More than half of the southern domain was vibrating, and the center of it all was none other than the Immortal's corpse, where nearly 100,000 cultivators had gathered in the vicinity of the Rebirth Cave. The vibration came from the chest of the corpse, as if its heart were beating. It emanated out in all directions, rocking the earth, sending out ripples through the land. As it spread, it touched mountaintops, sweeping through one sect after another. The location of the Violet Sect fate was not incredibly far away, so it was also affected. Many people heard it, and their hearts shook. Meng Hao suddenly paused, lifting his hand up to feel his chest. He could feel the vibrations which filled everything. Suddenly, his expression changed, because at that moment he realized that, to him, the vibrations sounded like a beckoning. In his estimation, it was a beckoning that came from none other than the Immortal's corpse, which he had been trying so hard to avoid. Filling the beckoning was an archaic voice that sounded directly into Meng Hao's mind. You. I know your bloodline. I know where you're from. You. Do you want to know why you could see me in that other world all those years ago? You. Do you want to know what world that was? I came here for you, and I've been waiting a long time. Come to me. Come to me here. You will know the truth about everything. The voice sounded ancient, as if it were floating through countless years of time, filled with ancient qi. As it echoed within Meng Hao's mind, it caused his blood vessels to surge. Blood pumped rapidly through his body. Suddenly, on the back of his right hand, a greenish mark appeared. 1. This mark first appeared on Meng Hao's hand when he reached Foundation Establishment in Chapter 100. This chapter was sponsored by Alan Tam.